My name is Comrade Ernesto Chukwukama. Welcome to this maiden edition of our press briefing on the mysteries of the rise, fall, and restoration of Africa in the global knowledge economy. And the African Renaissance Television is a youth television station that caters for the needs of the African youth. By definition, Renaissance means revival, restoration, or transformation of a nation or a people from underdevelopment to advanced development. The global knowledge economy we all call the global village is now accessible right in our hands. And the world is looking for talented people who can provide solutions to different problems confronting humanity and their nation. So we are trying to X-ray in this segment of our conversation on how Africa can move forward in this knowledge economy. We want to look at the mysteries surrounding the rise, the mysteries surrounding the fall, and the mysteries behind the possible restoration of Africa in this global knowledge era, where human knowledge is the only engine that drives national and personal economic growth. Because Renaissance, we want to look at, first of all, the rise and the fall of Africa. For in the beginning, God favored Africa because Africa was closest to the seat of wisdom, the sun, the tropics. And for that reason, God wanted to begin to show his charity to humanity from home. Also because he sent also his own people of Israel to aid Africa in her development aspirations. And though they became slaves, but they were the people who drove the rise of Africa as the cradle of world civilization. Without oil and gas, without gold and diamond, without foreign aid or debt. If Africa was able to achieve that feat in the early prehistoric times, why not now that they have human beings, people who have gone to school, who have, been exposed to the global village world? They can do better now. So what we are trying to look at are the issues that led to this rise of Africa as a cradle of world civilization in the first place. Because agriculture was the mainstay of Africans in those early days. And because the children of Israel introduced various forms of agricultural irrigation, especially during the years of Joseph as prime minister in Egypt, God gave the dream of an impending famine to Joseph, which he interpreted to Pharaoh and was made prime minister. And during those 7 years of plenty, he was able to cultivate all the lands in Egypt and other parts of Africa, because the whole world, the African civilization, was also made possible by the trans-Saharan trade activities then. People from East Africa, West Africa, and South Africa all travel across the Sahara Desert, especially West Africa and Central Africa. They buy things from their regions and go and sell to Egypt. Egypt was more like the world capital then. And then they buy things from Egypt back to their various regions. And this trade, most Europeans also embarked on it. So it was the wisdom of the Israelites through Joseph that made Africa become so rich within the 7 years of global harvest. They produced food in large quantities and stocked them in various silos. And they were able to stock enough food that will last them for the next 7 years of the famine. In fact, Africa was the only people God revealed his. Many countries perished that could not, find food to eat. Egypt, Africa became the headquarters of food supply in the whole world. Many other countries come to buy food from Africa and buy other things when their money failed. Even when their money failed, they have to give up their land in order to buy food. So, and this spread the African influence beyond to Europe and Asia at that time. So now, during these 7 years of famine, even Israel, Jacob, who was in Canaan, would have also perished, if not for the intervention of Joseph, who brought him from Canaan to Egypt with all the family. Now, basically what we are talking in this conversation is the role agricultural production, agric, and the trans-Saharan trade activities, the impact they had on the development of Africa in those early years, even though they didn't have access to oil and gas, gold or diamond, and there was nothing like foreign aid or debt. Africa was borrowing money to other parts of the world. So, but now it's a different scenario. And we want to look at the causes, the mysteries around the sudden fall of Africa from the cradle, from the exalted height of cradle of world civilization, poverty capital of the world, and foreign debt, foreign aid, oil and gas trading. The reasons are not far-fetched why our people had to fail, because the major cause of the fall of Africa is the exodus of the children of Israel from Egypt. While they were in Africa, Africans became so lazy, took them as slaves. They became slave masters. They were not ready to do the work by themselves because the slaves are there to do the work. Even all the Egyptian pyramids and hieroglyphics they were building then, Africans could not, learn the trick, the art of that building, the technology they were using to build high-story buildings that never fall down. So Africans did not supervise them. They were bent on punishing the people God had sent to bless them. And that is the reason when they crossed the Red Sea, Africans were left with nothing. The confusion and wars, the love of luxury, the love of money, the love of all these things took over the minds of so many Africans. They started to even kill and eat human beings, their fellow human beings. There are 3 things forbidden by God. 1, there are some animals forbidden to be eaten by human beings, and there are forbidden fruits we have in the Garden of Eden. But the most important thing forbidden by God is human beings, killing and eating other human beings. Nothing annoys God more than that. Because now, in the knowledge era, our people did not value human beings because they did not go to school. Not realizing that people are more important than things. They were placing things ahead of people. So Africa fell down from the height as cradle of world civilization, ruling Europe, Asia, and other parts of the world then. So they fell down from there to colonization. First of all, enslavement, slave trade, colonization, and now brain drain, the Japa syndrome, which virtually every African youth wants to embark on. So, but it's important to understand that slave trade actually started in Africa. If you remember, those Ishmaelite traders that were passing by Canaan and bought Joseph on their way to Egypt were no more than the trans-Saharan traders from Kano, Katsina, or Maiduguri, or some other place in Kumasi, Accra. So Africans actually graduated from enslaving people to killing the slaves and eating, the meat, eating the forbidden human meat. Because you don't know the destiny, you don't know the sensibilities God has put in the human being you kill. That's why the laws of every nation forbids it. And that the only best punishment for that is capital, that is execution. So we moved from that problem to other problems of power and control. The way we were using power against the slaves in our midst in those days, and not being able to do things on our own, paved the way for so much restiveness, inter-tribal wars, and all the luxuries that go with it. It is important that we understand the slaves who were bought, no slave was bought from Africa. Rather, they were exchanged because the West now discovered that Africa has no regard for the persons around them. They can kill and eat them anytime, do away with them. So now, this thing annoyed God so many centuries. And that is why when Africa eventually released Israel from bondage and they crossed the Sahara Desert, God caused Africa that the number of years they enslaved his people, they will also suffer for that number of years. It's about 430 years they enslaved Israel. So because why I said the slaves were not bought is because there was no medium of exchange at that time. And they come with small quantities of dry gin, tobacco, even marijuana and other addictive substances, mirror, and then they give them gun and a paper certificate as warrant chief of your area. So where you can recruit able-bodied men as slaves to go and continue the agricultural transformation now going on in the West. Because Israel took away everything they know that God taught them in Africa, both in terms of agricultural production and, trading, mostly in jewelry. They took them over to Europe. And when they brought these things, our people will take in, consume, and then give away their own people to go and develop the vast plantations in the West, in Europe and America. So by this act, a lot of human capital was taken away free of charge from Africa to the West. Let us agree that they did not go to school except their physical ability to till the ground under the sun, rain, or snow. But they have different sensibilities that would have helped in accelerating development of the world in this age of human intelligence. Even during the transatlantic slave journey, any of the slaves that showed early symptoms of sickness or remorse, unhappiness about the way they were taken away involuntarily, they were quickly thrown overboard into the Atlantic Ocean. They were discarded. And any human being you discard or kill unceremoniously, the soul, the spirit we want to fight back. The deadly sea monsters ate human beings until some of them could not eat anymore. They now teamed up because God has already given human being authority over every other thing he created. So they were able to manage those deadly sea monsters. That's what gave birth to what we call mermaid spirit, mame water. They gathered in the Atlantic Ocean at Bermuda Triangle and became a terrible, mighty force to humanity there. Anything that fly over that zone is at the risk of perishing. The Bermuda Triangle is a three-way from Africa to Europe and America. Now, the issue more important than remembering, the issue more important than remembering the bitter experiences of the slave era is that if those slaves were bought with money, they wouldn't be discarded on their way like that. Because out of every 100 slaves that were taken from Africa, only about 70 reached their destination. The rest are discarded, into the ocean as people who will create, medical bills for them during the journey. So if human beings were sacrificed in those years through the trade by barter system, those things they collected to give away their brothers and sisters are nothing but intoxicating, substances that cannot develop a nation. It is only human beings that can contribute to the development of any nation in this era of the global economy. So, moreover, if people were sacrificed in order to build the vast farm plantations in the West in those years, why not now that we have gone to school, we have knowledge, we can develop things on our own? But the problem with the average African is consumption. And that consumption leads to a lot of importation of things which you could ordinarily produce on your own. When you tell many privileged Africans, why can't we produce this or that is highly needed in the domestic market, the domestic economy of African nations, they will tell you there's no light, there's no water. And yet, people like Dangote of Nigeria was able to build his vast industrial empire without all these infrastructures. So there's urgent need for our people to move away from this consumption pattern to a production-oriented economy. When on your street, if 10 businesses spring up in your area within a year, can be sure that almost 9 of them will be consumption-based, setup. Few people talk about production, based enterprises in Africa. And that has led to our lack of domestic technological knowledge to drive our country in the global economy. If Africans would desist from importation, because when you import, you are only encouraging capital flight and job creation abroad, while your own people at home are jobless. You import rather than produce here. Bring those, your expatriates here to produce for you. You go and import, carry your money outside, create jobs for them, but back home, you are the only, king in the jungle. So we need to change our consumption pattern. From consumption-oriented, if you look at our consumption, pattern in Africa, first, we consume what we don't need. We must cease with this issue of killing or eating a human being, because it's forbidden by God. And if you look at our investment pattern, too, it is the same thing. Politics is consumption. Most people, Africans going into politics, they are not going there to serve their people, but to go and cut their part of the national cake. So you see everywhere hotels, come and buy, come and consume your money here, isn't it? And then you see churches spring up all over the whole place. If you read the classified advert of virtually every newspaper, almost 90% of them are new churches or mosques, religious groups that want to spring up in Africa. But we've seen that religion plays little or no impact in the living behavior of most Africans since the exodus of the Jewish people to Europe. But we call on God every time, but we fail to address the main issues that God is waiting for us to address. Therefore, the restoration of Africa in this present knowledge economy rests on our ability to let go of all these things that have hindered our development. Prayer answers from God. The government must place programs that will encourage, that will invest more on the people's ability. In the knowledge economy, money, you can have money, but when you are sick, money cannot reach you. When you are, when you need water or electricity, money cannot provide those things to your house. Money cannot teach your children either. The teachers can. So, because the knowledge economy depends on individuals running that economy, depends on human knowledge. That human knowledge is considered to be more important than the money. And as it is in the knowledge economy, as Africans have the love of money, power, and control issues so much, they will have to work harder in order to make people the centerpiece of all their development program. And the secret of African restoration in this knowledge economy depends on her ability to place people above money or what money can buy. If you carry the whole money in the world and bring it to Africa here and share it to the people, the continent will still remain poor because they don't have the people, the manpower, the human intellectuals who can use that money to bring out the best in every African. That's why the Bible said, my people perish for lack of knowledge. If any country does not have its own domestic technological knowledge, they will pay very dearly for it to get it from outside. And what we don't know is that we already have this second chance to restore, revive, and transform the African economy again through all our brothers and sisters that were sold into slavery. Africa has over 500 million blacks presently living in Europe and the Americas. Then those who left Africa on the basis of the regional economy, who want greener pastures in ready-made, economies. There are more than 100 million African-born immigrants who are now living in Europe, Asia, and the Americas. All these people would have contributed to Africa's global estate resources in the knowledge economy, because it's human beings that drive the global village economy. So our hope for restoration does not lie in oil and gas, gold or diamond, and all this foreign aid we seek. We can provide all the aid we need to ourselves simply by the involvement and participation of all these our brothers and sisters who have been, taken away from here. If the government can key into this program of reversing the brain drain to brain gain, each of those people living outside have one knowledge, specialized knowledge or the other, which can help contribute to the development of Africa in the knowledge economy. Only if we can make the move for them to assist their homeland compatriots in reversing the trend. The government can even make the Japa syndrome, they can benefit from those who are migrating. But the most important thing is to ensure that if you're migrating, you migrate as a skilled worker. Otherwise, you are bound to suffer many disappointments over there, and you work for years before you can save enough money to come back home. So if the government will have programs for training of intending migrants from many parts of Africa, we train you on the sellable jobs, skills that are required abroad, so that if you go there, you don't have to work for 10, 20 years before you come back home. Start at a very high level with a skilled job. We have skilled sea divers, we have skilled equipment operators like bulldozers, cranes, and excavators. We have injection specialists and theater attendants who are started on a very good salary from $20 up per hour. If you do such a job for like 1 year, you have a good reason to smile back home before you go back again. But when Africans forget themselves in diaspora and their home situation, they can spend 30, 40 years abroad without achieving anything at all. Especially when they get married. They take all their intellectual capital, human capital, is now used to develop foreign countries instead of the country where they received initial training and education. So the development of Africa in the knowledge economy rests on our ability to appreciate the importance of the human being, celebrating them, encouraging them to be the best they can be in various fields. If human beings are celebrated normally in Africa, the level of achievement they will attain collectively, that's what they call brain gain, can lead to increase in the nation's gross domestic product. If, for instance, our African brothers and sisters who are now Americans, I told you earlier, the slaves were never bought. If anybody told you he bought slaves from Africa, then let them bring their purchase receipt. They were ordinarily exchanged for useless things that gave our ancestors that did never go to school, gave them temporary joy then. But now we have gone to school. There is need for an African global reunion to make the minds of all those our brothers and sisters who were taken away by barter to return back to help Africa in a struggle for development. One of the ways we can achieve this, to achieve the restoration of Africa in the global knowledge economy. Africa has over 500 million blacks living in Europe, America, Asia, and the Caribbean islands. All these people are part of Africa's globalist. But African governments have never made any move to bring them back home since the abolition of slave trade. As our own, we ought to go to them one by one, from Europe, Asia, and America to the Caribbean and Pacific Islands, Australia, New Zealand. All the blacks in that region are still part of Africa's global estate resource. People think it's only oil and gas that can develop their nation, or gold and diamond. But they don't know that human beings are more important than all this if we know how we can use them, because they are now Africa's only global estate resource. In the absence of your investment in a foreign land, the only tangible resource you have are your people living in those areas. And that is why Africa is the richest continent in the world, even though they are yet to realize. If you go to Europe or America and Australia, out of every 1,000 people you see there, blacks you see there, they are all from Africa. You can't pass more than 100 people in Europe, Asia, or America without seeing a black man. Which shows you that blacks are into every system in Europe, America, and Australia. Unlike here, where you can pass 5,000 people without seeing a single white person. So this is a very great advantage for Africa. If they can appeal and appease the minds of those who were enslaved or taken away to involuntary service and bring them back, their mind back home. In addition to those who voluntarily left the continent in search of greener pastures, African governments can engage these people in their development aspirations. Definitely, Africa will again rise to become the cradle of what civilization in the knowledge era. Because there's no knowledge, idea, skill, process, or technology in Europe, America, and Australia that cannot be found in the African diaspora in those countries. But you can't find their people so much in our own economy. They only come to exploit, take what they want for years, and then they leave your country the way they found it. We will have so many Africans living permanently over there. The government can engage them through various activities and resources. They can bring a lot of foreign direct investment into the country and even increase the rate of local direct investment. Because we need only money. The government is only interested in the diaspora remittances back to Africa. But that's not enough. Their knowledge is not, in that remittance. And out of every $1 you see them remit back here, they are contributing like $40 to the economy of the countries where they live. So we need a reversal of attitude. In order to reverse the brain drain that Africa has suffered for years, we have to increase policies on brain gain. Not just the money they are remitting back home, but their total intellectual property, knowledge they have acquired over there. How do we go to Europe and America and we see how they organize their own system? Their economy is running well. That's why every African wants to go there. We can bring whatever they have done to improve their economy there back into Africa, to make Africa a continent to reckon with in the Committee of Developed Nations. I know it is not impossible to achieve this because God has already given us the people who can make these things possible in Africa. All we need to do is approach them, seek their intervention, because the Israelites are not coming back again to Africa to teach us how to farm, how to, build houses. And do you know that housing development is the oldest occupation in the world, with all the problems that come with it? You see people building houses all over Africa where nothing is happening. In most cases, people don't even live in those estates. But in the knowledge economy, the amount of money you use to build a duplex anywhere in Africa, excluding the land, can rent you a duplex where you can begin to, fabricate, assemble various high-tech products or services like what you're rendering here. These services are much more important than the money involved back. Those who want to travel, you upgrade their skill to get well-paid jobs right from the one they enter into their countries of destination. Then those who are over there that want to come back to Africa, you give them a safe landing that will make them start a new lease of life in Africa. The truth is that no country or economy is ever developed by foreigners. Africans must have to sit up to develop their own countries by themselves. And by this simple act of involving their compatriots who are already abroad. I believe that through that, and through the recognition of the fact that human beings are more important than things, we have to teach our people right from the beginning. Because if you train a child on how to grow, he will not depart from it. But here in Africa, most people are more interested in things like their money, their properties, and their cars. An African rich man can buy a car of $100 million and insure it with $1 million, for example. If you ask him to track his children, he will track the vehicle with $1 million. If you tell him to track his children and family, extended families and important loved ones, he will tell you they are in the hands of God. So who is not in the hand of God? Ab initio. Our propensity for power, love of money, properties, and ostentation, luxury life, getting hungry for what you cannot afford. All these things weigh us down from achieving God's plan, original plan for this continent. Because we are in the restoration season now, Africa has suffered for more than 430 years. If you check it from the transatlantic slave trade to colonization, the victims of the slave trade was in the age of agriculture, farming was the reigning thing then. Now, that is why they came to take away our people through trade by barter with intoxicating substances. Now, during the Industrial Revolution age, Europe and America also came to colonize our people so that they can take away, they can control us and control all our mineral resources and all the things that are found in Africa. Because God gave Africa everything, including the sun. Look at the sun. That is wasting in Africa every day. Whereas in Europe, America, they only see the sun 3 months in the whole year. That's when they call the summer period. That's when they see the sun. But we in Africa are lucky to see the sun 12 hours for the 12 months of the year. 12 hours every day for the 12 months of the year. If Chinese people were to come from Africa, they will harness this power of the sun that is wasting in Africa to build inverters and batteries that can be exported to other parts of the world to generate revenue. But here in Africa, we are crying over lack of infrastructure, even to power our own industries. I tell you that we have the capacity to harness the power of the sun, to power all our industries, all our businesses, and have a reservoir for modern export, to export power in inverters and batteries to other parts of the world. The same thing with our charcoal. During the cold season over there, every house you go to has a bonfire. They have a kitchen in the parlor. They set up bonfires in their parlor to keep the houses warm, especially during the winter period. So, but here, we don't need all that. So God blessed Africa from the beginning. But now what we are talking is reversing that brain drain that has visited Africa for so many years to bring gain. And that is what the African restoration is all about. Because global knowledge economy rides on the backbone of human beings, human resources. It is possible because Africa has the greatest human resource in the world. Apart from the 1 billion living at home here, you have over 500 million living abroad. So there's no country you enter, you don't see a black man there. No, that's black people. Any black man has his origin from Africa. I can assure you that none of them were bought as slaves with cash, with money. There are 5 ways we can use to restore this African civilization in the knowledge era. We have resources that have been written in volumes of books. One of the measures that will help to fast track the African Renaissance process is through respect for human rights, including child rights, because we don't regard that children have rights in Africa because we train them from out of pocket. But in Europe and America, every child receives child support from the government. So they share in the responsibility and ownership of children. That's why their rights are more guaranteed over there. But here, we feel they don't even have rights, So we need to develop greater respect for the rights of human beings, the right to live, the right to the basic needs of life, including health, education, shelter, and all the things they need. For instance, this Child Rights Act is a Nigerian version. We have the one for Ghana, we have the one for Kenya. All the African countries have this Child Rights Act since after the African Charter on the Rights of the Child. But few of them have actually gone into the implementation of this program for our children. Because today's child is tomorrow's adult and parent. If a child doesn't grow with the knowledge of his rights, you are giving him an express permission to disrespect the rights of other people, including the government, the rights of government, and the society. That is the number 1 point of corruption in Africa. A child that doesn't know his rights and doesn't know other people have rights to be respected will do anything believing that he's on the right track. Now, again, because of our love for power and control issues, everybody in Africa wants to be a leader because they believe that the price for leadership is high. When we were growing up, or even up till now, teachers give the vague promise to their school children. Hey, children, you are leaders of tomorrow. And everybody will clap. But it ends there, in the classroom. And that is why we developed these 30 laws of leadership to help every African child to bring out their leadership, increase their leadership quotient, so that they can be able to function from that early stage. Before they are 15 to 20 years, they have mastered everything about leadership. And that will help the government. All this insecurity, all these kidnappings, and hoodlums in all African countries are people who ran away from school or who did not want to learn from their teachers. So for us to encourage better leadership and management of the African societies, every child at Credo, from primary 3 till they finish secondary school and university, should be encouraged to make a good leader, be a proud leader of his school, his community, his family, and their nation in general. Because if you succeed in the end, your teachers will be proud of you, your family, your community, and your country. But this wrong promise of telling children you are leaders of tomorrow without giving them any reading or instructional material that will guide them in those formative years, it makes a lot of African youth to grow up with the vague impression that the end will always justify the means. It is not true. The end does not always justify the means, because we are people who are more qualified to be in certain positions, but they are not there. Africa should focus less on money and what money can buy, and or on connections they have or don't have. They should focus more on the God-given natural talents. All we need to do is to bring out the best in everybody. We know what you are good at, and you're allowed to do it. But the present practice whereby everyone wants to be a leader without the required character of leadership is not normal. This book will guide every African who aspires to be a leader in his country, his state or province, constituency, or local government area, to help them greatly. Now, we've always had, because of this leadership drought, that is what has led to mass unemployment and youth restiveness. Unemployment and youth restiveness are the major drivers of insecurity in any nation, because it is said that the idle mind is a devil's workshop. When youths in their prime are not able to, live a decent life, the idea of anything that comes becomes the order of the day. And anything that comes may include having to kill somebody, rob, steal, or destroy, things they are not supposed to. We need to reduce the tendency for joblessness. There are jobs in every community of Nigeria that can be done by any actively job-seeking youth. Now that the global village is in their hands, you see millions of African youths buy expensive handsets, mobile phones that has various capabilities of doing so many, tasks. But they don't use up to 10% of the inbuilt capabilities of those machines, the world in their hands. We are yet to realize in Africa what God has done to the continent through the introduction of this internet and mobile telecommunication. You can imagine how it used to be before the advent of the mobile phone. So many things have improved since these new technologies came. So it has provided a means of job opportunity for every graduating youth. Even while they are still in school, they can use their phones to engage with organizations and other individuals, because the global village world gives you opportunity wherever you are, because distance is not a barrier in communication anymore. So these job opportunities that exist in every community is provided through our training program for all unemployed graduates. We provide this training based on youth empowerment, employability, and entrepreneurship. So this training manual has the capacity to create 100 million jobs in Africa every year for the next 5 years. And everybody in Africa will be fully engaged. Every youth in Africa will be busy doing something, right from their immediate community, instead of roaming the streets after graduation in search of white-collar jobs that are no more available. Few organizations advertise their vacancies now, because if you advertise 1,000 jobs, you'll be surprised you may see over 100,000 people desperately fighting to get those jobs. So we want to reduce that tendency for seeking for jobs, to creating jobs for in our community for the people within our community. So this program is based on a 21-point community-based jobs that can be done along with us. Even as I speak, we are planning to recruit community correspondents, because the art of journalism has moved from city centers to, the hinterlands. They only cover news in the cities. Stories that are happening, events happening in the rural communities are not well covered in Africa. Meanwhile, 70% of Africans live in the rural areas of their country. So we want to increase the scope, the space for journalism practice through the training of community-based correspondents, so that they can report issues happening in their various communities and also help in the training of other people in these 21 areas of community, job training. These are jobs available in the immediate community. They don't need to go to the city center to look for a job. Then, that brings me to how the Africans in the diaspora can help to improve the African economy. The first one is through exports. Before you can embark on export, you must learn more about modern mass production and exporting. If you cannot provide the needs of the domestic market, you can hardly provide the needs, the quantity of goods or services that you can export from your country. So Africa needs this modern mass production and export orientation, knowledge, to help them a great deal. And this book serves as a very good resource to them. It's titled One Diaspora, One Export Commodity. The title is very clear. If 1 million Africans in the diaspora each choose a product or service from Africa which they can promote and market abroad in their various places of residence abroad, all those export orders, all those orders generated from Africans in the diaspora can help to increase production at home here and keep most of the unemployed youths busy in their various communities, producing one item or the other and then exporting them abroad. Africa has a very large market now for exports, especially with the new Africa regional trade agreement. You can export now from South Africa to Nigeria, from Nigeria to Kenya, Kenya to Ghana, to any part of Africa. So you're no more limited to exporting to your neighboring country. So one diaspora, one export commodity is aimed at making every African in the diaspora to choose one product from their home country of birth, initial training and education, which they can patronize constantly abroad. By importing those products to their countries of residence, they are increasing production at home and the inflow of foreign direct currency, which make the African economy to grow. It's a twin publication. The other one is one diaspora, one technology transfer. And that one encourages Africans in science and technology, ICT areas to bring one technology they observe abroad and begin to produce or assemble them here in Africa. We have all the raw materials in Africa. But what we lack is intellectual capacity to produce and then export them back to different countries. So one diaspora, one technology it will also help to fast track the African economy. Now, there's issue of outsourcing now, which many companies are doing. Instead of employing 10 people that you pay at a very high cost to maintain them in your company, you can go to another enterprise, environment where you have a lot of such people, whereby you may only just need 2 instead of 10 people to deliver that same, job of the 10. So that's what they call global offshoring. For instance, all the telephone-based services abroad, they pay their staff on the average of $20, $25 per hour. But here in Africa, the actively job-seeking youth or graduate can do that job seamlessly for just $5 an hour or less. We do that job with contentment and possible overtime for you. So is it not cheaper to recruit the African, technology-minded person to do that work, either as a telephone sales person or call center staff, help desk, or secretary, reception, or even as a programmer or enterprise architect? These service areas do not require physical presence between the employer and the employee. But once you are engaged online to do any of these functions, you can do your work quietly and send feedback to your employer, no matter where he is. Because, I said before, in the global village economy, there is no distance in the spirit. So, one diaspora, one technology, we help to bring the inflow of not just money, but all the brain gain, all the technology, knowledge they use in every country in the world. Africa can bring them back through the use of their citizens in the diaspora. For instance, if 1 million Africans are given the mandate to bring one technology-based product or service back into their countries of origin, if each one of those technologies brought in with $1 million, they cost $1 million to bring that product or service into the country. Now, it means that the 1 million people have together brought in a total of $1 trillion into their country of origin in Africa. So many African countries are aspiring to reach $1 trillion annual economy. But these things can be managed more efficiently through the use of our citizens in the diaspora. So offshoring is one of the means through which that can be achieved. In addition, we have to encourage capital inflow to the small and medium enterprises while we discourage capital flight from our various countries in Africa. Because capital flight drains the continent of jobs the youths are looking for. And also the money that would otherwise have been used here to develop so many production centers. Encouraging modern mass production and export in Africa through the One Diaspora, One Export commodity channel, or through the One Diaspora, One technology transfer. Because the major implication of these programs is that each of them has the potential to create 20 million jobs in any African country per annum. Like the example I gave you, if 1 million Africans in the diaspora introduce one technology each from their various countries of domicile to their countries of origin, what they have brought into the country collectively is about $1 trillion. And if each of those technology requires 20 people at home to manage, commercialize, and grow the business, then what they have succeeded in creating is 20 million jobs within the same period. So we want to encourage also the collection of the African brain gain tax. Like I said earlier, African-born immigrants living in the diaspora, they are all entitled to brain gain tax. The brain gain tax is the sum total of the cost of training any child from antenatal to kindergarten to nursery, primary school, secondary school, or university level. If you check the cost of this on every African parent, you see that most African parents are millionaires already without realizing it. They are investing. Now, at the end of this huge financial and economic, human and economic capital flight, when your children are taken abroad, especially through the high intelligence-based visa they call green card lottery, when they are taken abroad with this lottery, we'll be rejoicing here. They are going to be sending in more money and more money for us. But like I told you, for each dollar they send to you, they are contributing $40 to $50 to their country of residence abroad. So Africa is, in other words, training their human capital for foreign nations. So any country that induces Africa to send their children abroad in exchange for, citizenship benefits they will get, that country must pay the African brain gain tax. They must pay brain gain tax to the country of origin of that individual. Because the offering of the high intelligence-based visa, they call green card lottery, every year, it has taken away the best and brightest talents from Africa to the West, without considering the initial training and the education costs of all those people. So in order to address the restoration, of Africa in the new knowledge economy, the individuals, we cannot demand for, compensation for enslavement, because you cannot identify the number of, those who have died. You can only ask for compensation for Those you trained, but who are now living abroad without compensation to the families, the communities, the schools, and the governments that contributed to the training and the education and total upbringing of these children. You want to be a part of this African Renaissance trend that's moving across the continent in this age of knowledge economy, driven by human beings. We welcome you on board. You can partner with us by contacting us through any of our social media platforms on the screen, and you'll be glad for being part of those who reversed the African brain drain to brain gain, and those who brought about the restoration of Africa as the cradle of world civilization in the knowledge economy. Without oil, gas, gold, diamond, foreign aid, or debt obligation. God bless Africa. Please encourage every African watching this program to subscribe to our YouTube channel, African Renaissance Television, and bring this conversation to at least refer 5 other people to this conversation. Africa will be glad for you. Thank you.